This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Amazon for all your gifting needs.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you would like to be on the program. I have saved this for this moment. Park it here in the third hour of the show. But now I will get something off my chest here. I have had a habit, a pattern that I have going back to when I started at Red State back in 2004. When someone takes issue with something I have said or written or pronounced, I tend to ignore it. I get my say, they get their say. I tend to have a bigger platform, and there's just no reason really to respond. But a bunch of friends of mine have said, could you say something about this piece? John Davidson wrote a piece at The Federalist. And by the way, I do like John. I've met him before, don't know him well. He's written a book similar to the one I've got coming out, concerned about the rise of the wokes and how it's turning into a illiberal religion. But I did a monologue on this program a couple of weeks ago. I wrote a piece in National Review defending free markets. And I stand by that piece in the defense of free markets. And I think most of you, if not all of you, if you're on the right, agree that a free market is the best place to conduct our lives. What is a free market? First of all, let's lay the presuppositional definition here of what is a free market. A free market is you operating at arm's length in transactions with others to make determinations on what is best for your life and the life of your family. That's free market. When you go to the grocery store, you decide, is it in my best interest to buy the cheaper generic or the name brand cereal, if I buy cereal at all? Is it in my best interest to buy this car or that car? Is it in my family's best interest to go shop at Target during Pride Month and have my kids asking all the questions about what is all this rainbow stuff? As opposed to the progressive position of, well, the government should play a large role in how you order your life, how you live your life, how you engage in life. I am a free marketeer. I believe in free enterprise. People in arm's length transactions and businesses in arm's length transactions. It's how we get the supply and demand curve that's never going to go away. I think government fiat is wrong. And let me play you part of what I said. This was back on April 23rd. There is some weird movement happening within conservatism where a lot of people who were conservative suddenly aren't, and they don't want to give up the name conservative. They want to redefine what conservatism is, and I think that's a bad thing. Limited government and free markets are a good thing, and yet we have a number of people at conservative think tanks in Washington, D.C. now who want government control. They want their government to control it. Now, I need you to understand the problem here. If you limit the size and scope of the federal government, it makes it harder for big government to do things. If instead you decide that you want to be in charge of the government and use the government for your purposes, you're going to set precedents that the other side will use when they come to power. And ultimately, there's no such thing as a permanent political majority in the United States of America. So if you grow the government for your purposes and set the precedents of that growth, when you're out of power and the people you don't like are in power, they're going to use your precedents and the government you grew, and they're going to use it against you. Sadly, some conservative groups in Washington, D.C. have decided that the federal government can set about some sort of justly ordered society. Your view of a justly ordered society, I assure you, is completely different from the view of pro-transgender progressives who want a justly ordered society that is going to come after you for not supporting transgenderism. And yet, some of these conservative groups have decided they're going to grow government to justly order society, and you do need to understand you're not going to hold on to power in this country forever. Now, that was me on this program, April 23rd. Agree with everything I said. Well, John Davidson has a rejoinder to me at The Federalist. Let me read you part of what he wrote. He says I'm wrong, by the way. We'll lose the fight. We have to, this is direct quote, we have to stop thinking of ourselves as conservatives and start thinking of ourselves and our movement as restorationist and counter-revolutionary. In a very real sense, we have to refound our country. And to do that, we will have to seize power from the left and use it. Following Erickson's advice, eschewing power because of allegiance to a political fantasy means certain defeat. It means permanent dimitude for conservatives in a country run by people who hate them and are determined to destroy them and their way of life. The other option is to fight back, establish a beachhead, and use whatever power we can marshal to push back the left in hopes that future generations of Americans can live in true peace and prosperity. Wow, there are a lot of the online right buzzwords there. Counter-revolutionary, seize power and use it. Principles are called political fantasy. Dimitude, fight back, a beachhead. I'm actually kind of surprised he didn't throw in, doesn't he know what time it is? I get this all the time. Don't you know what time it is? I know what time it is. It's time to actually live up to your principles for once. My goodness. The abandonment of principles for raw power. Isidore just wants to use the ring just this one time. Let him use the ring, and then he'll throw it in the volcano. That's essentially where we're headed. Here's the problem with this. What this is doing, and what I don't even know that John realizes he's doing, is he's essentially acknowledging that the left has won because he's allowing the left to set the terms of the debate. If you're going to embrace power for the sake of power, you're embracing postmodern Marxism. That's what the left has done, power for the sake of power. Essentially saying that the left gets to dictate the terms of the fight. Our ways don't have to be their ways, but this idea that we need to seize power and use it. Well, that's what progressives are doing. So I guess this is trans conservatism. It's a progressive that identifies as conservative. I mean, they still like to use conservative, but now they want to get rid of conservative and say counter-revolutionary or something. You know, this is what the left also does. They were progressives, and then they were liberals, and now they're progressives again. And I guess this wing of the party, they used to call themselves conservatives. Now they want to call themselves counter-revolutionaries. That sounds awesome. Let's be a counter-revolutionary and maybe one day go back to it. But also, by the way, this completely misses the point. Completely misses the point of everything that I've said, which is use your power when you get it to end the ability of either side to use the power. Unless you're willing to acknowledge you want a dictatorship. If you really believe we're post-constitutional and we need to refound the country, that sounds like what you're too afraid to actually say yet, is that you think that we are post-constitutional and we need to impose our views and we need a dictator who can stop the left from ever coming to power again. Because in America, there's no such thing as a permanent political majority. I mean, look at the left. The left went all the way with Barack Obama thinking the right would never be dominant again. And then what happened? I mean, you had this emotional fit by the left where they got rid of the filibuster in the Senate because they were convinced the right would never take the Senate again. So who cares? And then what happens? This is what happens, by the way, when the online right catechizes itself, becomes deeply serious about things like permanent dimitude and unserious about any sort of public policy. I mean, do you want the government in charge of your life? That because he wants to use her, doesn't want conservative ends, just wants to use the government power for something. This reminds me of Joel Wellburn, by the way. It sounds a lot like Joel Wellburn. Let me read for you again what John wrote. We have to stop thinking of ourselves as conservatives, start thinking of ourselves and our movement as restorationist and counter-revolutionary. In a very real sense, we have to refound our country, and to do that, we have to seize power from the left and use it. Joel Wellburn is a actual Christian nationalist who wants to turn this into a like nation where the Christians are in charge and no one else is allowed to be. Listen to his language.
We're degenerates. We're not even close to. We're degenerates. The Constitution is not. It's not suited for governing degenerates. For governing degenerates, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, if you agree, disagree. But I think for our population that is degraded morally and culturally, and religiously, as far as we have, you need power. Men must be governed. you need a Caesar type, Now, if you're asking me my preference, that would probably be my preference, would be a constitutional republic. But I think the conditions for that is a moral people. So I think you can work towards that in the future. But I don't think constitutioning even harder is going to get us out of our current mess. I don't see us getting out of this apart from things getting worse and worse, and then eventually like a Caesar type rising through the ranks, a populist, figure, and the people, the political will, the people are desperate and they're like, yes, do it, so-and-so, and then so-and-so, Constitution be damned, just rules with an iron fist.
Is that where we're headed here, folks on the right? You want to just say, screw the Constitution, we need a Caesar? Now, what a lot of these people want to say is that, and John says conservatism really hasn't conserved anything, but let's think about that a moment. Let's see, we have a Second Amendment right, thanks to conservatives on the Supreme Court. School choice, which is a free market idea that conservatives embrace to bring free market competition to the education monopoly, is spreading across America. Even in like some progressives, like Illinois is considering school choice options. I don't know whether it'll pass there, but they're considering it. I mean, what else is out there? Well, it was the free market ideas of people like stopping drinking Bud Light that forced that company to make changes and fire some people. It was a free market exchange of ideas of people refusing to shop at Target that got them to roll back some of their pride displays. Conservatism has actually done a pretty good job. I mean, as I mentioned earlier in the show, just last week, a Bush, Biden, and Obama appointees on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld religious liberty for private Catholic schools. So what are we doing here? There's no agenda here. It's just power for the sake of power. That is postmodernist Marxist ideology guiding the right. These people are progressives. They're trans conservatives. They want to use progressive means for something that is not progressive ends, but not conservative ends, but not exactly sure what those ends are going to look like, as opposed to what I'm actually advocating here. Take the power back, win the elections, win the presidency, win the Congress, and pass laws that gut Washington, D.C. So when the left does come back to power, because there's no such thing as a political majority, and we're not actually going to have a dictatorship, as much as the left says we are and the right seems to want one, we're not going to do that in this country, at least anytime soon. So get rid of the power in Washington. Scrap it, gut it, deregulate it. Use reconciliation in the Senate, which bypasses the filibuster. So you preserve the filibuster, but you've empowered the reconciliation to roll back a lot of the left's agenda. There are actually ways to govern as conservatives. Lest you forget, conservatives push the GOP and Bill Clinton to balance the budget, and conservatives push the GOP led by Paul Ryan and Barack Obama to embrace sequestration, which actually were real cuts to the size and scope of Washington, not the cuts to future growth, but cuts to actual actual Washington, D.C. It can be done. And to the extent you say conservatives has failed, as John does, don't confuse the conservative movement with the Republican Party. They're two different things. Republicans in Washington actually did exactly what John wants. They seized power and used it, and they became Democrat light and said, we'll spend just not as much as the Democrats, and the public will like that. And what happened? The left got back power and spent even more. So stop Washington's ability to do these things, and you'll get the real reform. I'm not going to embrace postmodern Marxist thought, because that just means we really are letting the left win when we let their ideology guide our operations. We don't have to play by their rules. I refuse to.
I'm James McComb, reporting live from home in my bathrobe and slippers. Tonight, we're talking Dunkin' Polar Peppermint Coffee. Gene's here with the latest. Gene, do you copy?
The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be.
Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program. All right. It's Al. I'm going to go to Al. Welcome to the show, Al. How are you?
Great, Eric. How are you? I have a quick question. My wife and I are very new to grilling, and we're not quite sure. We took advantage of the Omaha steak deal, the burger deal, and I just want some tips on how to grill those burgers.
Okay, first of all, I got to say, Al, I'm shocked that Charlie let you on, but I'm glad he did. Okay, so let me ask you, do you have a charcoal grill or do you have a gas grill?
A Weber gas grill.
Okay. All right. So on most Weber gas grills, you have zones. So you have like a burner on the left and a burner on the right. Maybe you have a burner on the left, one in the middle, one on the right. Here's what I recommend you do. First of all, what you want to do is you want to turn your grill on and leave all the burners on for about 15 minutes on, I would say, medium heat, not high. I rarely ever keep my grill on high. So medium heat, 15 minutes, let it heat up, let the grates get hot. And then what you want to do is, particularly if you have a multi-zone grill, that is, you have either 2 burners or 3 burners, what you want to do is pick one side of the grill and throw the burgers down on the grill and do not touch them for 2-3 minutes. Let's say 3 minutes. Then after 3 minutes, flip the burgers over and do not touch them for 2 minutes. When you flip them over that time, turn the burners off on the other side and then move the burgers after those 2 minutes to that side and just let them sit there until you get the temperature that you want. If you want well done, it's about 155. You get a burger, you can get a temperature probe. You want a little pink in the middle, you can get them about 150. And just you've let them sit there. Now, here's the other thing is you've got to make sure you salt them right before you put them on the grill. Just sprinkle a little bit of salt and they'll be good. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm before I get out of here, because you can get 3 of them for less than $200, and you're saving $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is Eric3. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm is an air purifier, but it also traps and wipes out noxious odors. So litter box odors, pet odors, stinky frying odors, musty odors. You can plug it into the wall with a USB cord, or rather into your car if you got a USB outlet in your car, or you can plug it into the wall, and it works. I've used them in rental cars to wipe out smoke odors and in hotel rooms for the same thing. I've seen them in hotel rooms, like old buildings for musty odors. They just work. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm, it is an air purifier. It's also an odor eliminator. You get 3 of them. You save $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is Eric3, ERICK3. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is Eric3 for the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. All right, I'm doing something on the fly here because I'm kind of stunned that she would say this, but she did, and I want you guys to be able to witness what actually happened. Whoopi Goldberg, of all people, on The View. Let's see if I can pull this up for you guys here. Got to go there and there and there. And there and there, got to find the files and the folders and all of that. Let's see if I'm Whoopi Goldberg on The View, of all things, defended Harrison Butker. She did. Whoopi Goldberg defended Harrison Butker on The View. This is her from this morning.
So the NFL released a statement that he gave this speech in his personal capacity, and the NFL does not share his views. So, listen, I like when people say what they need to say. He's at a Catholic college. Yeah. He's a staunch Catholic. These are his beliefs, and he's welcome to them. I don't have to believe them. Right. I don't have to accept them. The ladies that were sitting in that audience do not have to accept them. The same way we want respect when Colin Kaepernick takes a knee. Right. We want to give respect to people whose ideas are different from ours, because the man who says he wants to be president, you know who? Yeah. He says the way to act is to take away people's right to say how they feel. We don't want to be that. We don't want to be those people. So I'm okay with him saying whatever he says, and the women who are sitting there, if they take his advice, good for them, they'll be happy. If they don't, good for them, they'll be happy a different way. That's
good for her. Good for her. I'm actually shocked that she went in that direction. But good for her for defending his right to free speech. We need more of that on both sides these days, particularly on the left. We don't have a whole lot of free speech out there. All right. 877-973-7425. Blake from Jacksonville, Florida, called a couple weeks ago. They wanted people to show up at the city council and read the names of the hostages, the Israeli hostages. Blake, welcome back to the show. How'd it go?
Eric, it went very well. First of all, I want to thank you for that history of Israel's, I don't call it independence, I call it restoration. What actually happened when Israel became the nation state that it was in the Bible. So thank you for that. As far as what happened on Tuesday night, the timing of it, with regards to the calendar and the fact that was the 76th anniversary of its restoration, was absolutely amazing. We had some challenges, one of them being that because we were wanting to have a lot of people from different faiths, including the Jewish faith, we were running into the calendar of the Passover, but I'd say we had 30 people there. And of the 30 people, we had 20 people read the names of the hostages. That included the hostages that are being held now, the hostages who died, whose bodies are being kept from being sent back to Israel. And we also prayed, read the names of the hostages who have been returned, because they've all faced that hideous and war crime that's been visited against them. And I'll tell you that a couple of city council members told me that they looked out into the audience and they saw people who were visibly moved by the fact that we did that. And it was also amazing because there were a whole bunch of Hamas people there, and they were being very difficult. But when we started reading the names, they became very quiet. So I think it was a very respectful and very intentional and very strong and way of bringing to light the fact that we still have hostages, that the crimes were committed. And it's also a great way to put a reference point to how our adversaries are acting at this today.
Sure is. Listen, Blake, I'm so glad you guys did that. Thank you so much for having the courage to show up at a city council, particularly when there are these pro-Hamas activists who are going to be present and try to heckle, and that it shut them up to do it. That's fantastic. More like that, please. All right, Will, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, Eric. I fully agree with your approach to limiting the federal government. One of the problems that we have is that all these politicians are not willing to make those sacrifices politically. They're all in there, and they all want power, even the Republicans. But we're going to have to limit this government because we're either going to do it voluntarily or involuntarily when we can't pay our debts. Mm-hmm. And especially the executive branch. It seems like since 9/11, the executive branch has grown tremendously.
Yes, you're right. Now, okay, first of all, I'm glad on the distinctives here so it's Republicans versus conservatives. This is part of my criticism now with some of the guys on the right is that they conflate conservatives and Republicans. And conservatives are an ideological group within now the Republican Party, more so than the Democratic Party. And when there are enough of them in power, they have had the ability to do things. Like, for example, in 2013, it was conservatives who pushed Paul Ryan and the Republican leadership to keep the government shut down until Barack Obama agreed to sequestration, real-world cuts in government. It was the conservatives and Newt Gingrich in 1998 who pushed Bill Clinton towards a balanced budget. It was conservatives who fought George W. Bush on No Child Left Behind, and they lost, but they extracted some concessions that prevented the government from expanding much further. And it was conservatives who fought Republicans on Medicare Part D, which actually long-term now, so many seniors have gotten their benefits from Medicare Part D. It actually has saved the government some money, which is why Biden is now trying to undermine it. So let's separate Republicans from conservatives. Now, what do we do on this, Will? Great thinking on your part. Let's talk about how can conservatives, if they win, get enough power. Now, we got to bracket this with this. You got to win elections. You know, and I don't mean to keep picking on John and the Federalists. He's got a different approach than me. That's fine. But the Federalists had a writer, John Gibbs. He also had worked in the Biden or the Trump administration. And when Peter Meyer, the moderate Republican congressman of Michigan, voted to impeach Donald Trump, they decided they needed to oust Peter Meyer. The district was designed for Peter Meyer. It was a moderate district. And instead of having Peter Meyer as the nominee, the Republican base there went with a guy who wrote at the Federalist, John Gibbs, who is way further to the right than the district. And now the Democrats own that seat. So the Republicans reduced their seats in the House by rejecting Peter Meyer for his disloyalty to Trump and going with a guy who was a terrible fit for the district. There's Joe Kinnan, Washington State. Same situation there. The GOP lost that. There have been a number of seats where this trans-conservative movement on the right, progressives who identify as conservatives, they put up these terribly fringe candidates who are terrible fits for the district. And so what's happened? You got a 2-seat Republican majority essentially right now, and all the conservatives complaining that Mike Johnson doesn't have their back. Well, there are more moderate House Republicans than conservatives. So go win elections with good candidates first. And then what do? Well, the playbook is, let's say Joe Biden, God forbid, wins re-election. The playbook is forced sequestration again. You'll have the numbers to do it. Forced sequestration. Real world current cuts in government, not cuts to future growth, but real world cuts. Or let's say, best case scenario, the GOP wins the Senate and the House and the presidency. Well, if that's the case, you've got reconciliation. Thanks to Chuck Schumer's precedent, you can do it twice a year. And you can begin to rein in the federal debt by cutting government programs to save money. Once you cut those government programs, Democrats will have to fight a filibuster to bring them back. Why can you cut them without the filibuster? Well, reconciliation is not filibusterable. So you just a majority vote in the Senate. So you start slashing the federal government through reconciliation. And then the Democrats, to get around that, they're going to have to fight the filibuster, or maybe they'll kill the filibuster. But the dirty little secret in Washington is, as much as all the activists want to kill the filibuster, there's really not enough votes in the Senate to kill the filibuster. And if the Republicans are in charge, it's not going to die. So you start cutting government that way. Likewise, in Congress, there is a rule where you can roll back regulations. That, too, doesn't have a filibuster in the Senate. So any regulation into the last 3 months of an administration, you can roll them back. So fight like hell to roll those back. You want a very specific way to fight the Democrats and the left while preserving the free market? Reconciliation in the Senate it's a legislative maneuver to deal with the deficit. It's a financial procedure. You know what will reduce the deficit? The federal tax on oil. So you use reconciliation to get rid of Joe Biden's bans on drilling in the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska, and you reform the regulation to expedite drilling permits in Alaska and the Gulf of Mexico in order to boost federal oil revenue. And then you put in a provision that prohibits the state of California from banning the sale of the internal combustion engine. Under the Interstate Commerce Clause, you can prohibit states from interfering in interstate commerce through state legislation. So you do that, and you have ensured California can't ban the internal combustion engine through interstate commerce. You've boosted federal revenue by expansion of oil and gas drilling in the nation, and you've done it through conservative policy. You've now blocked the left from being able to undo it unless they can surmount a filibuster in the Senate. Ultimately, elections matter, though. You've got to first actually win some elections with really good candidates. And if you win the elections with really good candidates, you can start implementing this. But yes, it's absolutely true. The fact of the matter is the Republicans and the Democrats alike both like big government. But the way the Republicans have always strategized is much like some of these people on the right want to do now. It's to let the left dictate the terms of the fight. And what the right decided, what these Republicans decided is, you know what, we're going to spend too. We're just not going to spend as much. And people will like us. The Democrats will promise to spend more, but people will be comfortable with our spending level. They'll keep us. Stop doing that. Stop letting the Democrats and the left dictate the terms of the debate. Stop letting the Democrats dictate the terms of power acquisition and the use of power. You don't have to let the left govern the terms of the debate. The truth, the fact, the reality is our ways don't have to be their ways. We can choose to operate differently. We can choose to provide an alternative to the left instead of another version of the left. We don't have to let the left dictate the terms of the debate. And when you have guys on the right saying we need to take power and use it, that's what the left says. I myself would prefer you take the ring of power and throw it in the volcano and be done with it, instead of saying we're going to use it this one time, just trust us. Every time Republicans decide to use their power, they wind up growing the government the left then uses against us. So why not instead focus on gutting Washington, D.C.? You'll always have California, but you can restrain California. You'll always have Washington, but you don't have to have Washington the size it is. You can cut it. And if you don't, the left will use the power unless you decide tomorrow you're coming out for dictatorship. And when that happens, you're going to lose permanently because you're a threat to the American Republic, and Americans will not reward you. Even if you think they will, they won't. So why not just gut government? Hillsdale College, talk about conservative standard bearers and intellectuals. Hillsdale College, they stand for the Constitution and the Republic. They have bright minds that come out of Hillsdale College, and they would love to have a relationship with you. You can get started completely for free with Imprimis. Come to your mailbox. Imprimis, I've been getting it since law school. You can get it as well. Imprimis is available at ericforhillsdale.com. You put in your contact information, and they will start mailing you Imprimis. Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. You go to ericforhillsdale.com, you sign up, you get Imprimis, and you can start this relationship with Hillsdale and start stimulating your mind with some of the best insights from the conservative movement. It's ericforhillsdale.com. You'll get Imprimis in your mailbox completely for free. It's part of Hillsdale College's educational mission. So, Scotty Scheffler, he's number one in golf. His wife had a baby the other day, and he took time off. Well, they're having the PGA Championship. He just got on the course less than 45 minutes ago and eagled his first hole. What an incredible golfer. Okay. I need to end the show this way. My daughter's high school graduation is in 4 hours. I'll be here tomorrow. It's graduation ceremony tonight. If you're a longtime listener of this program, 8 years ago now, 7.5, my wife was told she had 2 years to live. My wife has a genetic form of lung cancer. There's not a cure for it. If they were to, for example, do a lung transplant, eventually as her cells began to regenerate, the cancer would come back. There's no cure for it. She takes a pill made by AstraZeneca called Tagrisso. And the pill, her cancer comes from a protein her body's not supposed to make, but it makes. And it encapsulates into malignant tumors in her lungs. And the pill works for 2 years and then stops working because the cancer finds a way to mutate around the pill. And then there's really nothing to do. It's you're just waiting, and the wait apparently isn't long. Except my wife, somehow or another, by the grace of God, has another mutation, it seems, in her body that has allowed this medicine to keep working. And when we moved our daughter 5 years ago to the school she's in now, my wife got a meeting with the now headmaster and the principal and just said, I need y'all to commit to be with my kids along the way because I don't have much longer. And they were really kind and kind of blown away by what was going on. They didn't know before we got there the situation. And the headmaster, the principal, who are both good friends now, committed. They would walk with our kids every step of the way because my wife would not make it to graduation, and her mother didn't make it her graduation. My wife's mom died when my wife was in first grade, and now tonight, my in-laws, after my wife and I got married, I did the adoption of my wife to her stepmom, who is her mom, and her mom and dad will be with us for our daughter graduating high school. Really? Was not expecting this. It's been a wild ride. All of that is to say, none of us would be here but for the prayers of so many of you and great doctors and great medicine. But your prayers have meant so much, and we made it. Tonight, my kid graduates high school. How am I old enough to have a high school graduate? I mean, that's part of it. How am I old enough to do it? But we're doing it. My wife will be with me. She's mad at me. By the way, right now, I didn't do a good enough job of cleaning the guest room for her parents, and she's pretty mad. She'll get over it, I assume, and we'll be at graduation tonight. Thank you all for your prayers for so long. It has meant so much, and this day has arrived. The day we didn't think it would come is here. So you guys have a great rest of the day. I'm going to go have a tremendous night tonight with my wife and family and watch our daughter graduate from high school. I will talk to you guys here tomorrow and see you then.